The Champions League is back. The pinnacle of European club football starts today. We are going to give you the games happening today, and we'll talk about some of those games and what we are expecting in this year's Champions League. Let me start with you, John. Walk us through this format first before we talk about today's game.
Yeah, the format is a new one. You have 36 teams in a table format, just like you have in the Premier League and a couple of leagues in Europe. You have 36 teams on a table, and then you have the top 8 after 8 matches qualifying into the knockout stages of the competition, and then 9th to 24th on the league qualifying into a 2-leg knockoff run of matches before you get the final 8 to join the initial 8. So it's going to be 8 games for everybody in the league structure. In those 8 games, the most points you rack up in a game, you ascend on the league table. And then at the end of the run of play, 8 teams from the first 8 on the league will qualify, and then the remaining 8 from 9th to 24th will have to fight out for the remaining 8 slots in the knockout stage.
Others are out.
Others are out. No Europa League, no Conference League for them. No straight qualification to any other.
Okay, now, so what do you think the difference between these group stages and this format? If you look at those formats, they are quite different. Everybody is talking about when some clubs wanted to come together and form the Super League. Yeah. So probably UEFA looked at it and said, okay, let's do this way, so that we have more big games, because you're going to show you don't have to play every team. It's selected teams that each club is going to play, so we have more games and more big games, like big clubs playing each other. But what is different do you see in the old format and this new format?
Well, the new format has extra 2 games, and it's not this one you say you're playing against Liverpool home and away.
Yeah, just play
Liverpool just once.
Yeah.
You travel to somewhere else, you play that game just once. So you're traveling to maybe a team from England is playing a team from Spain just once. You're not going back to Spain again, and you cannot play 2 teams from Spain, and you can't play 2 teams from your port, which means, you know, when they were grouping it, they had 4 ports.
Yes, 4
8 teams in one port, so you can't play more than 2 teams from the same port.
Country.
So I think, and you can play more than 2 teams from the same country as well. So I think it's okay that way, but it now begs the question of the players, where the players asked before they could be given extra load of games to be played. Because I'm looking at it now, I'm saying, okay, fine. The likes of Man City were playing about 38 games in the Premier League, 16 games in the FA Cup, 10 in the Carabao Cup. Now the Champions League, they were playing maybe 6 games in the group stages and onto the knockout stages. Now you're playing 8 games, which is not the group stage. You don't know where you'll be traveling to your next matches. So we've seen the line of fixtures. They might be playing in Italy, go to Spain, and you might be playing a game in every 3 days for the rest of 1 year. It's tough, man, I have to say. But I think it's okay the way they grouped it now. Since the club wanted to play, or some of the big clubs wanted to play a Super 8 or perhaps a Super Cup,
Super League, yeah.
Super League, and most of the club did not buy into it, and they had to just change the format and name the Champions League and every other club competition around Europe in that regard.
Okay, the fixtures for today's game is Juventus versus PSV, Young Boys versus Aston Villa, Bayern Munich versus Dynamo Zagreb, Real Madrid versus Stuttgart, Sporting Lisbon versus Lille, AC Milan versus Liverpool. Okay, let's talk about the few games. Let's start with the English teams. Aston Villa, the former champions, they won the Champions League before. Yeah, it's been 1982. Someone was wearing born then, but they are former champions. Now they are back in this Champions League. What are you expecting from Aston Villa this season? Emery is building. He's building a fantastic team. So what are you expecting?
Well, like I said before, they've been in Europe for recently, not really going to competitions, stuff like that. But the Champions League, they've not been there. They won it in 1982. That's a long time ago. Now, they've not been in the Champions League for a very long time. And Young Boys have also been showing up, getting knocked out in the round of 16s or thereabouts. So I think Young Boys are not a side to write off in this tournament. So you see, like, the likes of Aston Villa would put up a performance, but we also expect Young Boys, just like the way Young Africans did for CAF Champions League last year and 2 years ago. They came up, nobody knew who they were, nobody knew how they could play, nobody knew what their strength was, and they shunned up until they got into the knockout stage. I think that's what Young Boys will be doing again. But like we said, now it's not a game of I'm traveling here home and away. So when you get to a place,
you have to fight for that 3 points.
Fight for that point and make sure you've closed that chapter. Then you move on to the next chapter. So I think that's what Aston Villa will be looking at for this game. But I also think Young Boys will be putting up a performance against the Aston Villa side.
John, what do you make of that game, the Aston Villa? Let's talk about the coach, what he has done in the past two and a half years he's been there, or 3 years. What do you make of the way he's building? Do you think that they can go far in this Champions League?
You have to look at Aston Villa's side and think, yes, we can see progress here, and yes, these guys are building a threat. Let's not forget that Unai Emery is not strange to European lights. He's been in this position countless times. He's won the Europa League and a couple of other titles elsewhere, and he's the right man to be in charge of Aston Villa at a
He's
time
doing a
like
great
this.
job.
Yes, he's doing a great job, yes. And I think he has the tools in the toolbox to dismantle young boys today. He should be going into that game confident of getting a result and getting a win.
Okay, let's move on to the next game. It's AC Milan versus Liverpool, John. They are two heavyweight European teams.
Yeah.
They are going to be clashing at the San Siro. And San Siro is a very tough place to go. But in recent years, AC Milan has actually not been that team we used to know. But what are you expecting? Do you think Anslot will go there and get 3 points when they play today's game?
Okay, now look at it now. I was looking at a video clip. I said recently when the AC Milan did I don't want to use this word now, but I just think that's the only word I have to use. A crazy transfer business. It was an unveiling of the world of stars where you had the Edgar Davis, Ancelotti, Romario, all of that players, big players at the time, all nominated for the Ballon d'Or. In one transfer window, you just signed, let's say, all the world-class players in the market. In one transfer window, you signed 8 or 9 players, and you ask yourself what happened to that AC Milan, because they've fallen below what they used to be. Because now you're looking at AC Milan for the first 3 games in the Serie A this season, they didn't get on the win. You go in, you score goals, you don't defend your goals, and you concede goals, and you end up getting a 1-1 draw, a 2-2 draw. It's now asking your question. This is the AC Milan that when they get a win, they finish off with the win. When they get a lose, they fight to get a win from that game. When they're losing from behind, they fight to get a win from that game. But recently, you don't see them like that. So you ask yourself, what happened to that AC Milan? They won the title this year in the recent years, but yeah, we know that. But we're asking ourselves, what happened to the AC Milan that goes into Champions League finals back-to-back years?
I tell you what happened to that set of AC Milan.
They can buy old players.
Not old players, because those old players delivered.
Don't even try to steal my thunder there. that golden generation of AC Milan died at the hands of Walcott in the Champions League game against Arsenal, when Walcott bamboozled the entire AC Milan defense, made up of aged men and captains. And since that transition from that breed of players into other younger players that they brought into the side, they've not really signed quality players in the side, for example. And then secondly, you have to look at the financials of the club and the management of the club. I find it very unsettling that AC Milan, the dominant force in the Champions League for a couple of years back, remember the likes of Andrei Shevchenko playing for AC Milan and co., they decided to let a Sandro Tonali leave AC Milan for Newcastle. I don't know what else shows you a casting image of a club that has maybe moved away from their history and decided to chart another course by letting key good players go. I think they've recruited poorly ever since. I think that they need to change.
You can't say that, because
yes, they've recruited poorly.
Even with the exiting of players, they've also won trophies in recent years.
They've recruited poorly. Just call it as it is.
It's not about recruitment. It's about mentality in the side.
I disagree. It's recruitment, both
it's
of them.
Mentality in the side, because no matter how you recruit, and those players you recruit, even if you recruit world-class players, because I remember the time they said Edgar Davis was not good enough, and yet with the mentality he had to show up and shut up and correct those criticisms. So I think it's about mentality. And before now, I think the former board of AC Milan that were there, they were accused of some things and they went to prison for it. And that's when the things started changing. Those people are no longer in power. So people here are trying to kind of hold things together. And I think it's going to be a problem.
Okay, let's talk about Liverpool and Slot Liverpool. He has played 4 games now in the English Premier League. He won 3 and lost to Nottingham Forest. Now, what are you expecting Liverpool to be doing at San Siro, John?
Yeah, at San Siro, they need to ensure that they do not start a negative trend of getting another loss. They need to correct some of the mistakes made in the weekend. Game. Yes, in the previous game, they let a Nottingham Forest, one of the oldest clubs in the world, score that goal, and they lost the match. They conceded and they lost. And then the players, if you look at the way they played, I can fault them on 3 counts. The first one is not playing with the right intensity in the game. The second one is burning out early in the game, not lasting 90 minutes full fitness. And then the third one is the hunger entirely. I didn't see hunger. And they need to fix these things. They need to play games. And which is, you see, one of the things we are seeing at Liverpool is the evolution from massive gang press to a mid-tempo gang press. And sometimes mid-tempo is not enough to cut it. So against AC Milan, I see against AC Milan in the Champions League, it's another fantastic window to recreate another magical night like we had in Istanbul.
Yes,
So please, Liverpool, just show us the same classic Liverpool side that we all know and love.
okay, let's move on to the main guys, the Real Madrid. Nobody, you cannot finish this preview without talking about Real Madrid. Real Madrid are the giants of European club football. They have won the Champions League 15 times. And at a particular point, they won it back to back to back. Won it 3 in a row. Now, Real Madrid is playing today. And they're going to be playing Stuttgart. So, John, this Real Madrid side, if you look at that Real Madrid, people are still talking about they haven't found that gameplay in the attack. Everybody is saying that they have not found their feet. If you look at the goals, Mbappe is scoring his penalty, Vinicius penalties. But Real Madrid are Real Madrid. When they come to Champions League, once they hear that anthem, like a spirit enters them and they start playing crazy football. But this game against Stuttgart, what are you expecting?
Well, look at it now. Stuttgart finished, I think, third or fourth in the Bundesliga last season, and you saw the way they performed. They like to play a high line. Man, if you're playing against a Real Madrid side and you're playing that kind of high line, expect to concede much goals because they have pacey wingers, they have pacey forward line, Kylian Mbappe, Rodrigo, and Vinicius Junior. And they also have a midfielder who can also join in that pace. I'm not even talking about one midfielder, I'm talking about 2 midfielders in person of Jude and Valverde. They've got pace to burn as well. And I'm looking at, I always said this, Valverde is one of these players that we didn't really see him perform under other coaches. He was always played in the front as a forward, but Ancelotti is playing him as a midfielder in pairing him together with the defensive midfield. So I'm seeing a Real Madrid side that will be a bit conservative because they've had injuries in recent years. Jude is not probably top of his fitness level right now. Kamavinga is out, so they would want to manage what they have and maybe in this game introduce younger legs into the side like Andagula. So I'm seeing a whole new Real Madrid setup. But we always say this: the front three is not gelled yet. How did they get the penalties? They tried dribbling past defenders, and they've been working the way they can walk. It's just time. You don't expect them to just tick immediately. It takes time.
Okay,
like
John.
I said.
I disagree with you.
John, the defending champions are playing today. What are you expecting?
Yeah, I'm expecting them to fix the gaping hole in the 9th position. And no anybody who says otherwise is out of touch with reality. Because you can see that there's a disconnect. Now, you have when you see the game, I know somebody said, I have forgotten who said it, that they play a fluid formation up front. A fluid formation up front until somebody has the job to man that position, it's crazy to have a side where you have 3 forwards and 2 of them are running down the wing, 1 person is running down the left hand, and the center is gaping open. It creates a problem. So somebody has to be the sacrificial lamb up there to stay in that position, wait in that pocket, and supply and receive service. And if that man is not going to receive service up front, talking about a certain Kylian Mbappe, then Mbappe is going to have to wing it, leave that position, take his own ball, run it down, and try and get a goal. I think the most important thing for them going up forward today is working together. Service to Mbappe, service to whoever is on the wings. Let everybody play for a collective unit for the goal of Real Madrid rather than individual flourishes.
Okay, let's move on to Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich is playing Dynamo Zagreb. If you look at that game also, Bayern Munich is building too. They lost the Bundesliga for the first time in maybe 10 years. They didn't win the Bundesliga. They didn't win anything last season. So they brought in Company, and Company is trying to build up their morale, trying to build up this team again back to where it used to be. But they are starting their Champions League today. What are your expectations for Bayern Munich and Company?
Like they said, the destiny of the young kingdom rests on the shoulders of a young man, his name. So the destiny of perhaps the destiny, yes, I'll put it that way, the destiny of Bayern Munich right now, winning the Champions League finals, rests on the intelligence of Company, who's a young man. And I'm not sure he's that intelligent to carry the side to the Champions League finals.
Oh,
I just have to state it the
disagree.
way it is. He might be able, because of the dominance of Bayern Munich, the name, he might be able to. He might. It's a maybe. He might be able to dominate the Bundesliga. You get, but in this year's Bundesliga, he has competitions from the likes of Bayer Leverkusen as well, who did not allow most of their players go in the transfer market. He has competitions from Dortmund. He has competition from Stuttgart as well. He has competitions from many other clubs, Leipzig, in the Bundesliga. So I think he can dominate because of that name in Bundesliga. But it doesn't translate on the Bayern Munich, on the Champions League field. So I think against Dynamo, they might, because Dynamo are also champions in their own right. They dominate the Croatian league. So yes. I think it's going to be a war of who dominates the stage. It's just the first game. I wouldn't say on the long run what happened, but the first game, I'm seeing Bayern Munich come up top of that game, but I'm not seeing them come up top of in the long run.
John, let's talk about Juventus versus PSV. If you look at Juventus, they bought two. They are trying to wrestle that league again from Inter, because about a couple of years and they have not actually won the Serie A. But now they are playing the Champions League. Juventus PSV. Tell us something about it.
It should be a once-over from Juventus, irrespective of the fact that they are rebuilding. They should have enough firepower and star power in the side to win PSV. On the other hand, PSV, I think, are going to give them a tough time because they are not going to want Juventus to just win them a flat out, maybe 4-0, 3-0 fiesta. They need to put in a good game, but Juventus have enough firepower to overcome PSV.
Okay, now let's get your prediction before we end this particular show. Okay, let's start with the one we not need to talk about, the Sporting Lisbon versus Lille. What are your predictions?
Lisbon 1-0.
Okay, no, sir.
It's tough, man, but Sporting Lisbon 2-1.
Okay, Juve versus PSV. What are your predictions?
I give it to Juve 3-0.
Well, I give it to Juventus 2-1.
Young Boys versus Aston Villa.
I'll hold out for a draw in that game.
You?
Aston Villa 1-0.
Bayern Munich versus Dynamo Zagreb.
Bayern Munich 3-1.
You?
2-1.
2-1. Real Madrid versus Stuttgart.
Real Madrid 2-1.
That goal is going to come with a lot of goals. That game is going to come with a lot of goals. I'm giving it 4-2 by Real Madrid.
You 2-1?
2-1 Madrid.
Okay, the final one, AC Milan versus Liverpool.
It's going to be tough, but Liverpool should be able to edge it 2-1.
Well, I said this earlier and I'm going to repeat it and I'm going to stand by it. It's a 2-2 draw.
It's a 2-2 draw.
It's a 2-2 draw because these two teams would have to try and caution out their weaknesses against their opponent. So they'll have to stay with a draw in this game, in this first game. Then maybe going forward, they might have to know how to win games.
And the Champions League is back. I hope you all enjoyed this today's Champions League. We have a whole lot of games. The defending champions are playing today. Let's sit down, enjoy Champions League. That anthem is heavenly. Once we hear that anthem, it's time to enjoy good football. See you guys next time.